How did the life of this Roman governor who authorized the death of a being so special like Jesus Christ end? Let's delve deeper into this impressive story about the tragic fate of Pontius Pilate after the crucifixion of Jesus. At the apex of the story that would change the world, a name echoes with the cruelty of destiny. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor whose decisions transcended time. After the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, his choices not only sealed a man's fate, but cast a shadow of torment over his very existence. Wrapped in suffocating guilt and wrenching indecision, he found himself trapped in a harrowing cycle of remorse and despair. This is the shocking chronicle of a leader consumed by tragedy, in desperate search not only for atonement, but for the redemption that could free him from the chains of his own soul. In this moving account, we explore not only the weight of decisions that shape destiny, but also the fragile hope that shines in the darkness of consequences. Imagine being responsible for the most controversial decision in history and suffering the consequences in silence. Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, appears in several historical and religious sources. What happened to him after that fateful day? This story combines biblical, historical, and traditional accounts. Pilate is mentioned in all four Gospels of the New Testament, where his hesitation and eventual decision to crucify Jesus are detailed. His interactions with Jesus and pressure from Jewish authorities are described in Matthew 27, Mark 15, Luke 23, and John 18 and 19. Sources such as Jewish historian Flavius Josephus and Roman philosopher Philo of Alexandria provide additional historical context about Pilate and his governance in Judea. By combining these sources, we can gain a fuller understanding of the complex figure of Pilate and his role in the crucifixion. To fully understand its history, it is essential to explore the events narrated in sacred texts and the complex political and social dynamics of its time. Keep listening to discover the incredible and disturbing story of the Roman governor who sealed Jesus' fate. Pontius Pilate, Roman governor of Judea, was in a dilemma. Jewish religious leaders demanded the crucifixion of Jesus, accusing him of blasphemy. However, Pilate found no crime in Jesus, John 18 verse 38. He tried several times to free Jesus, even suggesting the annual release of a prisoner during the Passover, but the crowd chose Barabbas over Jesus, Matthew 27 verses 15 to 26. Despite his reluctance, he gave in to crowd pressure, symbolically washing his hands and handing Jesus over to be crucified, Matthew 27 verse 24. This gesture was an attempt to absolve himself of responsibility for Jesus' death, but it would echo in history as an example of cowardice and injustice. Furthermore, the biblical narrative highlights that Pilate tried several ways to appease the crowd, including scourging Jesus, in the hope that a lesser punishment would be enough to satisfy the Jewish leaders, Luke 23 verse 16. This moment not only sealed Jesus' fate, but also marked the beginning of the end for Pilate, whose actions and their consequences would be debated and analyzed for centuries. Pilate was aware of the political instability in the region. Jerusalem was busy celebrating Easter, and the presence of Jesus, considered a prophet by many, only increased the tension. Remember to comment and share your experiences in the comments below. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now so you don't miss any important messages. Religious leaders accused him of inciting revolt against Rome, Luke 23 verse 2, a serious charge that could justify his conviction under Roman law. Pilate was in a difficult position. If he released Jesus, he could face a rebellion by the Jews. If he condemned him, he would be authorizing the death of a man he considered innocent. To avoid a mutiny, Pilate gave in to their demands. Little did he know that this decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Bible does not provide details about Pilate's inner thoughts, but his actions indicate a man under extreme pressure, trying to balance justice with maintaining public order. Subsequent history suggests that this choice would weigh heavily on him. Historically, maintaining order in provinces like Judea required a delicate balance of power, and Rome's enemies could exploit any sign of weakness. Thus, Pilate was in an extremely complicated situation. where any decision had the potential to generate serious political and social consequences. While Pilate was judging Jesus, his wife, Claudia Procula, had a disturbing dream. She sent a message to Pilate, warning him not to have anything to do with that righteous man. Matthew 27 verse 19. This dream is mentioned only in the Gospel of Matthew, and its origin and meaning remain shrouded in mystery. Some interpreters suggest that it was divine intervention to try to prevent Jesus' crucifixion. Claudia Procula is a figure who appears briefly in biblical accounts, but her intervention highlights Pilate's moral dilemma. She suffered a lot because of that dream, which she believed was a divine warning. Ignoring this warning was a mistake that would torment Pilate forever. Christian tradition later sanctified Claudia Procula in some denominations, reflecting the perceived importance of her role in the Passion drama. Furthermore, the figure of Claudia is interpreted by some as a symbol of the voice of conscience, trying to intercede in moments of moral crisis. His disturbing dream adds a supernatural dimension to the narrative, suggesting that greater forces were at play in this trial. Jesus was crucified under the orders of Pilate. The inscription on the cross read, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews," John 19 verse 19. This inscription, in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, was an attempt by Pilate to assert the charge that Jesus claimed to be king, an act of treason against Caesar. While Jesus suffered, Pilate struggled with his doubts and guilt. The crucifixion of Jesus is a central event in the Gospels, described in detail, including the reactions of various spectators and the supernatural phenomena that accompanied it, such as darkness at noon and the tearing of the temple veil, Matthew 27 verses 45 to 51. These events only added to the burden on Pilate's conscience, as he witnessed occurrences that suggested Jesus' divine innocence. The Bible implies that the crucifixion was not just a human event, but also a cosmic moment where the forces of good and evil clashed. Historically, the practice of crucifixion was reserved for the worst criminals and was designed to be a public spectacle of shame and agony. Pilate's decision to proceed with this form of execution, despite his reservations, shows the degree of pressure and the complexity of the political and social situation in which he found himself. After the crucifixion, Pilate became obsessed with the decision he had made. The crowd and religious leaders manipulated him, and it ate away at his soul. Jesus' words echoed in his mind, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23 verse 34. Pilate's guilt grew every day, becoming unbearable. Although the Bible does not provide details about Pilate's subsequent feelings, the psychological impact of his actions is a reasonable speculation based on the gravity of his decision. Christian tradition suggests that Pilate never overcame the weight of his responsibility in Jesus' death, a burden that profoundly affected his subsequent life. The apocryphal Gospels and other extra-canonical sources, such as the tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, further elaborate on Pilate's anguish, painting a picture of a man racked by guilt. His attempt to symbolically wash his hands did not alleviate the moral burden he carried, and he must have constantly reminded himself of the events of that fateful day. If you are enjoying this message, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving words of inspiration and hope. Leave your comment below and share how this message touched your heart. Ethiopian Orthodox tradition even considers Pilate to have converted to Christianity, acknowledging his guilt and seeking redemption, although this is largely speculative and not universally accepted. The guards who guarded Jesus' tomb reported that he had been resurrected, Matthew 28 verses 2 to 5. This caused an uproar among the Jewish leaders and Pilate. He tried to suppress the truth by bribing the guards to spread a lie, Matthew 28 verses 12 to 15. But news of Jesus' resurrection spread quickly, increasing Pilate's torment. The resurrection is the central event of the Christian faith, definitively affirmed by the Gospels and epistles of the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15 verses 3 to 8. For Pilate, the resurrection represented a crisis of legitimacy. If Jesus was resurrected, it not only validated his claims to divinity, but it also meant that Pilate had condemned an innocent man to death. Pilate's attempt to cover up the resurrection reflects his struggle to maintain order and his sanity in the face of events that defied Roman logic and authority. Furthermore, the spread of Christianity in the following decades, including the conversion of many Jews and Gentiles, magnified the impact of the resurrection and the implications of Pilate's decision. Efforts to suppress the truth of the resurrection reflect the ongoing conflict between the temporal power of Rome and the emerging spiritual power of Christianity. Emperor Tiberius received conflicting reports about events in Judea. Pilate was in a precarious position, facing accusations while he was already unpopular due to his brutal repression and insensitivity to Jewish traditions. Flavius Josephus and Philo of Alexandria describe Pilate as a ruthless ruler whose actions often provoked the wrath of the Jews. In an attempt to maintain his position, he returned to Rome but was exiled to Gaul, present-day France. After his fall from power, Pilate spent his last days in disgrace. Some traditions suggest that he committed suicide, unable to bear the guilt and shame. This narrative is corroborated by sources such as Eusebius of Caesarea, who wrote that Pilate, in despair, took his own life during Caligula's reign. His life and death are remembered as an example of how power and responsibility can lead to personal ruin. The complexity of Pilate as a historical figure and his interaction with the events surrounding Jesus' crucifixion continue to fascinate scholars and theologians to this day. Despite numerous interpretations of his life and death, Pontius Pilate remains an enigmatic figure. Governor of a troubled province, he made a decision that resonated for millennia. Her story is a reminder of the complexity of human choices and the unforeseen consequences that can follow acts of power. Whether Pilate had some form of redemption or reconciliation with his actions is something we can only speculate about. His tragic figure serves as a point of reflection on justice, power, and morality. After his fall from power and his exile to Gaul, Pilate faced a fate marked by disgrace and remorse. Historical tradition suggests that he, tormented by guilt over Jesus' condemnation and his dealings with the Jewish people during his rule, eventually met his end in an extreme act, suicide. This account is found in some ancient sources, including accounts by ecclesiastical historians such as Eusebius of Caesarea. Pilate's suicide is interpreted as the culmination of his personal downfall and his inability to deal with the consequences of his decisions. For many scholars and theologians, his life and death serve as a powerful example of the moral complexities faced by those who hold political power and the decisions that can shape the course of history. In addition to historical and ecclesiastical sources, the figure of Pilate has also been explored in literature and art over the centuries. The drama of her interaction with Jesus and her subsequent fall are recurring themes in literary, theatrical, and visual works that explore themes of guilt, redemption, and moral responsibility. In the context of Christian faith, the figure of Pontius Pilate plays a significant role, as his decision to condemn Jesus to crucifixion is seen as a crucial moment in the history of salvation. The crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection are central events that have profound theological and spiritual significance for Christians, reflecting the belief in divine redemption and forgiveness. In short, the story of Pontius Pilate is a powerful reminder of the complexities of human nature, the decisions that shape individual and collective destinies, and the consequences that can arise from the exercise of power. His life and tragic fate continue to be the subject of study and reflection, providing insights into fundamental questions of morality, justice, and responsibility. After his suicide, the figure of Pontius Pilate continued to echo through the centuries. In Christian tradition, he is remembered not only as the Roman governor who authorized Jesus' crucifixion, but also as a symbol of the moral complexities and consequences of his decisions. His life is often used as a powerful example of how political power can be wielded through human failings and how individual decisions can have lasting impacts on history. Furthermore, Pilate became a recurring theme in Christian art and literature. His representation in paintings, sculptures, and literary works often reflects the nuances of his personality and the circumstances of his time. He is often portrayed in works that explore themes of guilt, remorse, and redemption. offering different interpretations of his figure as cultural and theological values evolve over time. In the context of Christian liturgy, the name of Pontius Pilate is mentioned in the recitation of the Nicene-Constantinopolitan Creed, highlighting his significant presence in the narrative of the Passion of Christ and in the history of Christian salvation. His inclusion in the Creed serves as a reminder of the crucial role he played in the condemnation of Jesus, highlighting the continued relevance of his figure in the Christian faith. Therefore, the story of Pontius Pilate continues to resonate not only as a historical narrative, but also as a symbol of the moral and ethical issues that permeate the exercise of power and human decisions. His life and actions are studied and reflected upon to this day, providing insights into the complexity of the human condition and the challenges faced by those in positions of authority. Thank you for tuning in. God bless your life.